Thank you for watching or listening to this free podcast of the Young Turks. We want to make sure that you get some portion of the show every day, but if you want the full show, which is actually 5 segments, come become a member and support independent media as well. tytnetwork.com/join. Meanwhile, enjoy the free podcast. Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur. Oh, who's this friend of mine that is here? Oh, did our Streamy Award for Top News and Culture show in 2017 come in today? Oh, I guess it kind of did, didn't it? Okay, here, let me show you the gentleman here. Okay. Although I'm not sure he's a gentleman. I don't think he is. Anyways. All right, fun for everybody. Thank you, guys. Almost every time we win the audience award, the Academy oftentimes is like, whichever Academy it happens to be, like Young Turks. Anyway, I'm a little better man about mainstream coverage lately as well. But thank you to all of you guys for making these awards happen year after year after year after year after year after. Oh, should I go 16 years? Anyways, got a huge show ahead for you guys today. After all that unbearable bragging, I'm actually going to admit that I was wrong about something in the first story. That'll be fun. We'll get to that in a second. We figured out who is most likely to vote for Trump. I'll explain that also in a minute. Scott Pruitt's in a world of trouble. I think he's on political death's doorstep. I will show you why a little bit later in the program. Unfortunately, we have another unarmed black man shot, this time in New York. And then we have, speaking of death, unfortunately, a CNN pundit has declared that Bernie Sanders 2020 is already over. Huh, fascinating. What horrific transgression did Bernie Sanders do to merit that bold statement? Well, we'll find out a little bit later in the show. And it was a sad day, I guess. I mean, that's huge news, right? But Bernie had a good run. I guess that's that. A CNN pundit says his career is over. Oh, a CNN pundit against Bernie Sanders. What were the chances? I believe the answer is extraordinarily high. All right, we'll tackle that a little bit later. Now, let's go to the first story. Okay. Trying to figure out how to start this story because there's a lot of different ways to do it. All right, anyways. So we had the shooting in Orlando, of course, at the Pulse nightclub, and it was done by Omar Mateen. He's mentioned in this article. We try not to talk about the names of the mass shooters afterwards, but in this case, I have to be clear, and I need to clarify that as well as several other things that happened in that shooting. And there was a lot of wrong information, as it turns out, that was stated about this particular guy and his motives. In fact, his wife was tried for helping him commit this act of terrorism. And in that trial that has now concluded, we found out what the reality was. And so there was a ton of speculation. Was it because he actually was a person who had gone to the Pulse nightclub many times, and that in fact he was closeted and had a former lover inside the nightclub, and he did that. Now, I have to tell you, that is something that was reported widely. There was even a guy who wore a disguise and did an interview on television claiming to be his former lover. Very convincing, and certainly convinced a lot of the news outlets, including myself. And I have said that on a number of occasions. Well, I'm here to tell you that was wrong. So I retract that. That is not why he did it. So now we find out the real story because of this trial. So let me go to HuffPost here for a wider explanation.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
They explained that over the past 2 weeks in Orlando, Mateen's widow, Noor Salman, was tried for having allegedly helped him plan his attack. The popular understanding of the Pulse shooting as a carefully targeted massacre was on trial as well. And in acquitting Salman, 31, on Friday, a jury also delivered a verdict on the story we'd told ourselves about the killings. We'd gotten it wrong. So, yes, we collectively in the media apparently definitely had it wrong. By the way, the other people who had it wrong were prosecutors who went after his wife. Now, that was a terrorism charge, and she got acquitted. That almost never happens. And it turns out it's because they didn't have the evidence on her. So, and the jury did not think that it was a difficult decision. So, she not only did not go to help him in those shootings, they did not case out the Pulse nightclub. In fact, he apparently had never even heard of the Pulse nightclub and did not know what it was. And so, of course, she couldn't have helped him case it. And apparently an FBI agent investigating within days knew that she had never gone anywhere near the Pulse nightclub. They found that out in the middle of the trial. And the judge who had kept her in jail without bail said, "What? You knew a couple of days into your investigation, let alone in the middle of this trial, and now you're telling me that you knew from her cell phone data and tracking her phone that she'd never gone anywhere near it, and you're telling us in the middle of the trial." Part of the reason that she was acquitted, because it just wasn't true that she helped him. In fact, this monster had beaten her, raped her, etc. So you know how much time she spent in prison wrongly? 14 months. Got a son, couldn't see him, couldn't touch him, couldn't hug him, couldn't kiss him. Her grandmother died while she was in prison, couldn't go to her funeral, couldn't see her before she passed away. So now that's the injustice done to Noor Salman, who also suffered at the hands of Mateen. But now let's turn to the other evidence in this case and why he actually did it and why we know that it wasn't related to the nightclub in particular. Melissa Jelson doing a great job in reporting here, explaining there was no evidence that he was a closeted gay man, no evidence that he was ever on Grindr, as a lot of folks had reported. He looked at porn involving older women. But investigators who scoured Mateen's electronic devices couldn't find any internet history related to homosexuality. So, look, you commit one of the biggest mass murders in American history, and yes, investigators are going to look through your internet searches to see what you were up to. And it turns out, and he did watch porn, and you'll find out what he's into when you look through his searches that he thought were private. And it turns out it was not homosexuality, okay? As far as investigators could tell, Mateen had never been to the Pulse before, whether as a patron or to case the nightclub. Even prosecutors acknowledged in their closing statement that Pulse was not his original target. It was Disney Springs Shopping and Entertainment Complex. And further clarity on that, and conservatives can be happy about this. He thought there was too much security there. And so he Googled Orlando nightclub, randomly found Pulse. Investigators also said that when he did that Google to find his next target, when he couldn't go into the other places that he wanted to hit, he did not search for gay or LGBT or any of those terms. So it turns out it was a random nightclub that he hit. So more evidence here. They presented evidence demonstrating that Mateen chose Pulse randomly less than an hour before the attack. It's not clear he even knew it was a gay bar. A security guard recalled Mateen asking where all the women were, apparently in earnest, in the minutes before he began his slaughter. So look, very understandable why folks thought that he had targeted gay people, because even if he had done it for reasons related to radical Islam, well, there's an argument to be made that obviously that radical Islam is not in favor of homosexuality, and they thought maybe he might have targeted homosexuals on purpose because of that. And there were reports that his dad said he was once, quote unquote, disgusted by seeing two men kiss. So fair conclusions early on, very understandable. It is really disturbing that evidence did not come forward more quickly in the media, and much more disturbing that prosecutors pursued this case against his wife anyway, knowing all of this information. And so it looks like it was not a hate attack against LGBT members. To me, look, that's important, but he killed 49 people, wounded 53 others. I mean, it is horrible act of terrorism, and it's a massacre any way you classify it, and clearly terrorism. And so, but it was not done because of other reasons related to his closeted personality, et cetera. That part is apparently not at all true. So why was it done? No, it was because of radical Islam. There were daily obsessive searches about ISIS, however, on his phone and in his computers. So he did not look up gay porn, or was not on Grindr, none of that stuff. But he did look up ISIS a lot. And now some of this was reported at the time, and I told you guys about it too, but it seemed like a throwaway at that moment, that right before he went in the club, he said, oh, it's because of ISIS, and went in. But now there are more details. We did not know the degree to which he had searched for ISIS-related propaganda on his computers earlier. We do now. And at the time when he'd called in the middle of the attacks, and they have him on tape saying this, says, you have to tell America to stop bombing Syria and Iraq. They're killing a lot of innocent people. What am I to do here when my people are getting killed over there? You get what I'm saying? No, we don't get what you're saying. And of course, that is not a reason why you should massacre innocent people. But of course, that's what disturbed people do. And but in this case, it seems clear now. Yes, his motivation was because he was looking at ISIS propaganda. They did not, to the best of my knowledge and what is reported, do not have solid connections of him coordinating it or planning it with ISIS. I mean, he barely planned it at all. He looked up Pulse nightclub an hour before he did the attack. So, but to me, that's not that material. It's still definitely terrorism, and definitely because of this particular political cause. Okay, now just look, Melissa did a great job here in talking to people in the community, in covering the trial, and you could tell in her reporting, and we'll have the link to the article down below. But she talked to some person there, and I don't want to pick on them too much, but it is a little bit disturbing in terms of how all sides these days are viewing different stories. So let me give you the quote. She says, during the trial, I spoke to one LGBT community leader there who said he would always know in his heart that Mateen picked Pulse to kill gay people, and that Salman knew of his plans. That's his wife. No amount of evidence would change his mind, he said.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Well, I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in a world where we don't care about the evidence and that we ignore facts and that we just go to what is convenient for us or what we already believed, regardless of the facts. No, for God's sake, for everyone's sake, for reason's sake, yes, you should care about the evidence. You should care about the facts. And if you got something wrong, you should be clear about that and correct it. And if your previous idea was that he targeted that nightclub because it was a gay nightclub, as I thought, you should be open to evidence and facts that show the reality to be the contrary. So I hope we as a nation can get past this idea of sticking with our preconceived notions, and we could all be open to reality as it is, whether it fits our narrative or it doesn't. So at least now we know a lot more about the reality of what happened in Orlando. Okay, so now let me go on to the reality of Donald Trump and how he got elected. Okay. So researchers decided they were going to look into what made you the most likely to vote for Donald Trump. Okay, well that's important and interesting. And they had a number of professors look at this, studied it, talked to about 1,500 people, so it's a good sample size. And they published in the Journal of Sociology of Religion. Because it turns out the thing that made you most likely to vote for Donald Trump was actually religion. Well, it's a lot more specific than that, though. So let me dive into this and explain. The findings suggest that Christian nationalism is a unique and independent influence that led to the Trump presidency, as Carol Coravia explains at HuffPost. So first of all, if you're not familiar with it, what is it? Christian nationalism is an ideology that fuses Christians' love of God and country. It hinges on the narrative that the United States has a special covenant with the Christian God. Now, look, I'm not a religious person, so it's hard for me to understand that kind of thinking, that there is a Christian God, and in the Bible, there's even another God that once defeats the Christian God. Read the Bible, it's a fascinating text. So, is there a Muslim God and there's a Jewish God and then they fight every once in a while and there's a royal battle royale? I don't know. To me, it all seems unbelievable. But a lot of people believe not only Christianity, but this form of Christian nationalism where they think, no, my Christian God is right and he's meant to rule this country. Now, these folks, of course, are not patriots. They don't even really believe in the idea of America. America is a secular country. It's written in our Constitution. They're not big fans of reading. Look, I got to be honest with you. They haven't read the Constitution that says we shall not establish a religion. How much clearer did it need to be? When you take a half an amendment, like half of the Second Amendment, you ignore the part about the militia and well-regulated part, and you say, oh, guns, it says guns. Well, didn't you read the First Amendment? Didn't you read the rest of the Constitution where it says that we will not have any religious test for office. We shall not establish a religion. We are secular in our founding. And they just refuse to recognize it. And they would rather live in a country that is run by religion, like Iran or Saudi Arabia or the Vatican. And so that is Christian nationalism. It's literal. I'm not the one who says it. They're the ones who say it. And it's in this polling. So they explain further in the Sociology of Religion, Americans who embrace this narrative and perceive threats to that identity overwhelmingly voted for Trump. And that's what it is. It's about their identity. If they perceive an attack, like for example this video, if they watch it, they'll lose their minds. How could you? We know your God is wrong, or you're an atheist, and that's why you're going to burn in hell, or whatever it is. I know I'm right, and if you say I'm not right, you're attacking my identity. Now, they'll say that I'm not right all day long. They don't mind that at all. Oh, Muslims, they're the worst, as you're about to see. They don't mind attacking other people's identity. But if you even touch their identity a little bit, they're like, oh, they're so hurt. They're so hurt. Nothing but snowflakes as far as the eye can see. It's a blizzard, okay? So now let's dive into what their concerns are, because this is the group that elected Donald Trump. And if you don't know, white evangelicals, specifically white evangelicals, showed up at an astounding 85% voter turnout. And 81% of them voted for Donald Trump. That's why he won the election. Now, I showed you that in the polling earlier. Now, this just dives in a little bit more to find out why and what are their characteristics. By the way, today, a poll out, in fact, it was done recently by Pew Research, and still at this late juncture, no, they haven't moved at all. 78% of white evangelicals still support Donald Trump. So, they use different statements to determine their affinity for Christian nationalism for the people who voted for Trump. And for everybody in the study, but this is the group that tested most positive for Trump. So one thing that they asked was the federal government should enforce strict separation of church and state. Now, people who've answered no or hell no to that were very likely to vote for Donald Trump. People who answered yes to these 5 were also likely to vote for Trump. The federal government should declare the United States a Christian nation. That's just amazing, man. We live in 2 different worlds. They think that we should just shred the Constitution and become a theocracy, and we should declare this a Christian nation. The federal government should do that. They also say overwhelmingly the federal government should advocate Christian values, not any other religion, just Christian values. The federal government should allow the display of religious symbols in public spaces. The success of the United States is part of God's plan because God can't stand Canada or Cambodia, just decided to favor us and only us. I don't know why he doesn't like Botswana or Rhodesia. Anyway, I don't think Rhodesia exists anymore, so maybe he doesn't. Of course, name something else. Anyway, the federal government should allow prayer in public schools. That is another tenet of theirs. Okay, so now let's go more to the analysis. The researchers included a few control variables, including responses to the Baylor survey that measured participants' economic satisfaction, sexism, racism, attitudes towards undocumented immigrants, and views of Muslims. And we'll come back to that one because they did have views on Muslims. To make sure that Christian nationalism isn't acting as a proxy for political conservatism or religiosity, the team also included controls for things like party affiliation, conservative religious beliefs, and religious practice. What they found was that even after controlling for these other influences, Americans who supported 5 of those statements and rejected the one on church-state separation were much more likely to have voted for Trump. So it wasn't that you were more religious overall, it was that you believe these tenets, that you're a Christian nationalist. That's what made the difference. Okay. In fact, a Democrat who held views consistent with Christian nationalism was 3 times more likely to vote for Trump than a Democrat who didn't hold such views. On the other hand, Republicans who scored low on the Christian nationalism index were less likely to vote for Trump. So we have our answer. We know who overwhelmingly voted for Trump and put him in office, and we know why. Because they would like to turn this into a Christian nation. That's not hyperbole, that's not fear-mongering, that's what they say. And in fact, when you talk to the professors who did the study, they explain that the reason why those white evangelicals are still willing to look past all of Donald Trump's sins, all the things that they said they cared about before, family values, the divorces, the extramarital affairs with porn stars, and the list goes on and on and on. They say it's okay because God makes choices on who his messenger is, and it's not related to the messenger or the messenger's actions. For whatever reason, because God always works in mysterious ways, God has chosen Trump as his vessel. And so if God has made the decision, it's over. Now, how do they know God made that decision? They don't. Their leaders told them that. Their leaders told them that. Why? Because Trump has given them extraordinary access. Before the election, during the campaigning, he had an advisory board filled with evangelical leaders, and he said, "I'll give you guys power." And they said, "Great." And they went to all of their flock, and they said to them, "Yeah, God chose Trump. Don't worry about anything he did because God chose him. What are you going to know? You know better than God? No, you don't know better than God. Shut up and vote for Trump." And they were like, "Yeah, absolutely, Trump it is." Okay, so it doesn't matter. You can't move him off that position because God can't be wrong. All right. Another strong predictor of vote for Trump in Whitehead study, and he was one of the professors who did it, was anti-Muslim sentiment. Say it with me. Of course it was. So now Christian nationalism is the most important, but then Muslim is also very, very high on the list. So what do they want to do with Muslims? Do they make sure they're okay? Because the Christian thing would be to look out for your neighbor, right? No, that would require reading the Bible. All right, statements used to measure attitudes towards Muslims, and they scored high on all these. Refugees from the Middle East pose a terrorist threat to the United States. Not some, not the terrorists themselves, no, refugees, period. Muslims hold values that are morally inferior to the values of people like me. That scored really high. Muslims hold values that are morally inferior. But when you say, hey, I'm a little worried that you might be a white supremacist or apparently a Christian national supremacist, they're like, what do you mean? Of course not. I mean, you're inferior to me, but I'm superior to you. I'm supreme above you. But how could you call me a supremacist? How could you do that? Okay, but if you tell these people, you're not good people, you judge other human beings, by the way, unlike Jesus Christ, and you are filled with fear and loathing and hatred, and politicians use that to hoodwink you. They go, oh my God, how could you say that? How could you say that? My feelings are so hurt. But Muslim, that's what I think about Muslims, and they're totally fine with it. They're like, oh, you hate Muslims like I do? Great, you got my vote. Here are more things that they strongly agreed with. Muslims want to limit the personal freedoms of people like me. Well, ironically, they answered in earlier questions that they would like to limit the freedoms of other people and turn this into a Christian nation that only serves them. But missed the irony completely. And finally, Muslims endanger the physical safety of people like me. Again, not terrorists, not radical Muslims, just Muslims. They endanger me. Why? Conservatives, as we've discussed before, and there's been studies on this, they have a larger amygdala, and there are other reasons, but generally they are more afraid than progressives. They're afraid of change, they're afraid of the others, they're afraid, that's why, oh my God, black people, oh my God, immigrants, oh, Muslims, wow. So when you ask Muslims endanger the physical safety of people like me, they're like, yes, I'm so afraid, I need a leader. I need a leader who's gonna protect me. That's why when Donald Trump said the preposterous thing in his acceptance speech at the convention, that only I can protect you, people with logic and reason rolled their eyes and were like, what a buffoon, who says only I can protect you? What, there's nobody else that can protect you? But to them that made sense because they're so afraid. And they look for a leader to tell them what to do. Who should we hate, dear leader? Oh, we should hate the Muslims, and we should just turn this nation into one that only serves Christians. Yes, that's my guy. He's the only guy who could do it. So they're not gonna turn on him. He could have 17 new affairs. If we find out that he's had abortions, that he's paid for abortions of mistresses or wives or whatever, it still will not turn them. It will not turn them because God makes mysterious choices, and he has chosen Trump to make this a Christian nation. And so we're done with it. All the things that Trump has done, still 78%, right there on his side. So now you know what we're up against. And so the idea that Democrats have that no, we can win over these Trump voters. There's a lot of different Trump voters, but these are the most hardcore ones. That we could win over hardcore Trump voters. Really, how? What are you gonna do? Oh, no, you guys are right. Let's just turn it into a Christian nation. Jews, who cares about them? Get out of here, right? Muslims, we obviously hate, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just turn it into a Christian nation and declare that they are superior. Is that what you're gonna do to win over these guys? Then you're not gonna win them over. The only way to win them over, and I know that this will also shock them, is to win the culture wars, is to convince the younger generation of logic and reason and facts and evidence that there is not a sky god that hates everyone that doesn't look like you. That's just not true. And it's also not true that the United States Constitution is in favor of setting up a Christian nation. It says the exact opposite. Just read it. All you have to do is read it. So we have to win that war, and we have to defeat these people. because there's no reaching out to them. They're not interested in you. They want to rule over you. All right, that's the reality of it. Now you know. We'll be right back. You're right in the middle of this podcast. We got another great segment coming up for you. If you'd like the full show, which is actually 5 segments, go to tytnetwork.com/join. You become a member, you support the show, you support independent media, and you get the whole 2-hour show ad-free every day. Let's go do it now.
Hey everybody, welcome back to TYT.
Okay, indeed. So we have fun tweets for you guys. First, our listeners. Jamie Johnson says, of course they don't read the Constitution. They don't even read their own holy book. Well, that's true. Pick up a Bible, open it up to any chapter, any place, and just start reading. You'll be an atheist within 15 minutes. Okay, anyway. Brandon Marvin says, Christian Republicans vote for the candidates that least represent the values of Christ. I'm from Alabama. You guys really want to change this country? Move the F here. Hashtag carpetbag us. Roll Tide. Okay.
I don't know what any of that means, but okay.
He's saying, come, let's fight them. Okay.
Oh, okay.
They don't really represent the values of Christ. Okay, so we got to stand up for the real values of Christ. I like Brandon's fighting spirit.
I'm embarrassed to admit that I don't know what the carpet thing is.
Carpetbagger is when someone from outside the state comes into the state and then runs for office.
Okay, got it.
Hillary Clinton, as an example. Okay, 2 quick tweets for you guys. Dr. Victoria Ruveni says, I wish the interview on the Young Turks rebel headquarters with Delaney Easton could have been longer. She sounds amazing, like someone we need, and I can't wait to vote for her for California governor in June. If you miss any of the Rebel Headquarters interviews, youtube.com/TYT Politics. But I got to tell you guys, do not miss tonight, okay? You know what we're having? We're having 2 Justice Democrats debate. Ooh, is it going to be JD on JD crime? So, but there's a twist, and you're going to love the twist. Okay, so don't miss it tonight. It's right after the Young Turks. And then this tweet, I don't think they use hashtag TYT Live though, but I'll read it. NRA TV tweets, I really can't stand the young turds, and especially the guy who runs the place. His name is like Kank or something like that, like a canker sore. I can't even pronounce his last name. NRA TV contributor, hashtag we stand.
So they have put out a video response to our coverage of the things that they said following the YouTube shooting. And it was probably one of the greatest honors of my career.
So look, these guys, they don't have any arguments. So they do things like, guy sounds foreign. Look at his name, Kank, got him. Young turds. Oh, you're
so
only the 17 millionth person to have said that. Like, but every time they're like, oh, I got a good one. Okay. How about you address the real issues?
Yeah.
And of course, they don't want to do that because they represent the gun manufacturers that are literally killing us. Okay, let's move on. We got other stories.
All right, we have a rundown of great stories, serious stories, stories that I sometimes feel great despair about. And I wanted to have a little bit of fun before we get to those stories. So I want to start with a quick video featuring Ted Cruz. Ted Cruz was at an event in Austin, Texas, and he was actually approached by a female Texas resident who has pre-existing conditions and is very much concerned about the state of healthcare in America. And so she approaches him and asks him, well, first tells him what she's going through, and then asks him a very important question. Take a look.
I'm legislator. I just want to read what I want to ask. I'm a woman over 50 who, as of February 7th, has 7 active pre-existing conditions. I'm not counting being female and a survivor of abuse. I purchased my individual policy on the health insurance exchange. If you force me into a high-risk pool, you will either bankrupt me or kill me. I take this risk of medical aggression personally and seriously, and I can assure you I'm not the only Texan who does. My question is, will you pledge to submit to a DNA test to prove that you're human?
Well, ma'am, thank you for that. And one of the great things about our democratic system is that we can treat each other with respect and civility.
Is that a yes or a no?
Ma'am, if you want to engage in insults, that's your prerogative.
No,
but I'm not going to
it's a yes or no question.
Thank you for being here,
It's a
ma'am.
yes or no question.
Thank you for being here.
Okay. First, I do want to give him credit for handling that in a calm and professional manner. He really did, and I give him credit for that. With that said, the question, will you take a DNA test to prove that you're human, is amazing and hilarious.
Yeah, I wish she could have had two different interactions with Ted Cruz, because the first part of the question was wonderful and really substantive. I want to come back to that in a second. But let's be real, if she just asked that first part, it wouldn't have made news like it is now. Everybody's talking about, will Ted Cruz take a DNA test to prove he's human? Or will we find his eggs somewhere? Okay.
Yeah.
And I would say poor Ted Cruz, but no. Because there's like as many fun conspiracy theories about him as almost any politician. Is he a lizard person? Interesting question. We, like Fox News, we just ask questions.
We just ask the questions, that's all.
Lizard person, question mark, right? And is he the Zodiac killer? Question mark, I don't know. Okay, in reality, of course, we do know. Let's just clarify, because it's the internet, he's not. Okay, he has many other issues. But in all seriousness now, so that was fun. But the first part of the question was actually devastating, and I wish he was forced to answer it. She has 7 pre-existing conditions, and if Ted Cruz gets his way on healthcare, I want to reiterate the quote she said. If you force me into a high-risk insurance pool, which is what Ted Cruz is in favor of, that is absolutely true, you will either bankrupt me or kill me. And look, that's literal. And I know the Republicans get upset when you say that, but you know, what's more upsetting is when you're put into a situation where you either be bankrupted or killed. And so those pre-existing conditions are no joke. And for a lot of Americans, it will literally kill them. In the high risk pools, well, those you wind up having to pay a lot more money because they already know you have a condition. They don't want to pay for your condition. They only want healthy people, so they make profit. So they don't have to pay for their insurance. That is part of what's so sick about relying on private insurance.
I also wanted to quickly touch on another part of her question that I think a lot of people are overlooking in talking about this interaction. When she talks about her pre-existing conditions, she also mentions the fact that she is a woman, which I think a lot of people forget. The Affordable Care Act, for as flawed as it is, and it is flawed, absolutely. Prior to that, being considered a woman was a liability. I mean, you would have to pay significantly more for your health insurance compared to men, and it was because you're a woman. Because the assumption was, well, women are going to go see the doctor more. Women have more health care needs. In reality, women are better with keeping up with their health and taking preventative measures so they don't wait till the last minute to get super sick and then go to the doctor. But the Affordable Care Act help tackle that issue. And so I love that she mentioned that. It's very important. And finally, the thing about him getting a DNA test to prove he's human, I don't think she said that in an effort to say that he's a lizard person or a monster or a Zodiac killer, anything like that. She's tapping into his lack of humanity. And I think that it's something that resonates with a lot of people in regard to a lot of politicians.
Yes.
So
the internet's having fun with it because of the rumors. But of course, in reality, that's she's asking about his empathy. And you're absolutely right about that. And by the way, she did not say being a woman is part of her 7 pre-existing conditions. She said on top of that, I'm also a woman. Right. And of course, there's the issue of pregnancy. But it's putting that on women and saying, well, you got extra costs is insanity. I'm pretty sure that took 2 to tango there.
Right.
And then finally, look, we shouldn't get used to the idea that private insurance gets to profit off of our misery or sometimes literally in the case of healthcare, our death. So they say as if it's their right? Well, I will give you insurance if I think I don't have to pay for it and I'm going to make a profit on it if you're healthy. If you're not healthy, I don't want to give you insurance. But if you don't have insurance, you can't afford it and you will be bankrupted. Or after you're bankrupted, you won't have treatment and then you die. That's why you can't have private insurance. This is a case, it's like a private fire department. You can't say, well, hey man, you didn't pay for the fire insurance, we'll let your house burn down. First of all, it's deeply immoral, but second of all, the fire will spread. So there are a lot of different issues as to why this is an instance where the government should handle it. The insurance part, not the doctor's part. It's not a complete takeover of medicine, as Dianne Feinstein and other Republicans say. Yes, I said other Republicans. Okay, so that's why single payer makes sense. That's why Medicare for all makes sense. That's why defeating Dianne Feinstein makes sense. Did I say that? Allison Hartson.
With Allison Hartson, absolutely. All right, so let's move on to some other news. The right wing's response to the YouTube shooting continues, and it is incredible to see just how many people want to blame the victims when it comes to this particular shooting. So we have a couple examples for you, and unfortunately, we will begin with Alex Jones and his commentary on how YouTube invited this upon themselves. Take a look.
YouTube is demonetizing, as I said, everybody but establishment stuff. The left at first was like, yay, the last few years, censor conservatives, screw them over. And then now almost everyone's being censored, but a few handful, maybe 100 leftist talk shows who then get force-fed to everybody and pushed out because they're anti-American, and then they still are monetized, but they'll be removed as well. So this is the process of how censorship works. The globalists don't want anybody having free speech. But you know, you take artists and you take their material and then you use them to build your organization up, YouTube, meaning the people, and then you censor it. And I've seen the videos. This is not censorable stuff. But they don't want, let's put some of this on screen. This is what they censored. Is her doing yoga exercises and basic stretching exercises. And NasimABC.com, NasimSabZ.com. And you can go there. We've gone and looked. I mean, there's just nothing there to censor. And it's terrible that she shot 3 people.
So let me just begin by addressing the very last thing he said, where he claimed that he went to that website to check the type of content that was demonetized. And by the way, demonetized means the advertisements were pulled from that ad, right? That personal website was taken down immediately, meaning that before she was identified, authorities had taken down her website. No one had access to it. You can go to it right now. It is gone. No one had access. He did not see the types of videos that were demonetized. He just lies to his audience over and over again. With that said, really, that's your take on this? That YouTube demonetized videos, and so people are angry, the globalists are after us, and so a woman shot innocent people working at YouTube.
It almost seems like you're justifying the shooting.
I mean, this is insane.
So, and then he goes, well, I can't believe that they would target me. You just justified a shooting at their headquarters. And you get to feel aggrieved that they're not giving you money. Demonetized does not mean censored. You can still have your videos up on YouTube. You can't have your videos up on ABC or CNN. And YouTube allows that, but you spit in their eye and you go, oh, somebody, I guess you guys had it coming that somebody came to murder all of you because you didn't give me the money that I think I deserve as an artist.
And look, here's the thing. I think that conversations about demonetization and the frustrations that people are feeling about that are completely justified. A lot of people relied on YouTube for either a huge portion of their income, like us, or for all of their income. And so I understand that frustration, but it's important to have that conversation with actual evidence, rational conversations, reasoning, logic. That is not the conversation that's happening right now. Why are videos being demonetized? What is the root of the problem? What can YouTube do to improve their algorithm so innocent videos that aren't bad don't get demonetized? Those are fair conversations to have, but unfortunately, we're seeing the most extreme people having the most nonsensical discussions and essentially, persuading people to take action, and that's not good. That is not good. We need to stop giving people like this, the ability to basically incite people and create this fear and paranoia.
Yeah, so look, we are greatly frustrated by the demonetization issue as well. I'm also concerned that the establishment media is going to come and tell YouTube, Google, Facebook, and all those guys only run CNN. They're the only quote unquote legitimate news. I think that's garbage. I think it's not true. And it is a way to shut out independent voices and their competition. But that doesn't make Alex Jones' arguments correct. So number one, just even justifying that shooting in any way, shape, or form is hideous and horrific. But number two, like if you go to the core of the argument, I'm an artist, I put my video on YouTube, this is this argument, and YouTube must pay me. No, they don't have to pay you. There's a billion other platforms, and some of them pay you, some of them don't pay you. Whether you want to put up videos there is your choice. This is a similar argument that people made about Huffington Post, and liberals made it about Huffington Post. They said, well, I wrote articles for them, and so they should have paid me when they got the big payout from AOL or whatever. But did they ever say they were going to pay you? No, that wasn't the deal. I wrote for Huffington Post. I wrote a lot for Huffington Post.
Yeah, you did.
I was one of their top bloggers. Not a big deal.
Definitely
actually
not a big deal.
Anyway, but they never told me they were going to pay me. The deal was I write for you, you feature it. And they did that. They honored their end of the deal. Nobody at YouTube ever went to Alex Jones or anyone else and said, now, Mr. Artist, we promise that we'll make you rich. That is not part of the First Amendment, and that is not part of YouTube obligations. And you're not allowed to go and incite people to shoot them and kill them if you were under the mistaken impression that they owed you money.
And I love how he just uses the word globalist in every argument. Like it makes how are the globalists involved in this? Anyway, okay, moving on, Tucker Carlson, another example of a ridiculous response to the shooting. He has been angry at the media in general because he believes that the media makes too many generalizations about things, particularly generalizations in regard to white men after mass shootings happen. Now, if you look at the statistics in the United States, the majority, I'm not making this up, you can look for it yourself, the majority of mass shootings that are carried out in the United States are often perpetrated by young white males. And he hates the fact that people bring that up. And so he decided to make generalizations following this YouTube shooting. Take a look.
Now let's pause for a moment and pretend this is not the 8 p.m. show on Fox News. Let's pretend it's somewhere else on the dial, maybe CNN or MSNBC or actually any other cable channel or newspaper in America. If that were true, by definition, we'd have to draw hard and fast conclusions from this tragedy using the limited fact set available. We don't really know much at this stage, but sweeping dumb generalizations are what the media do, so we would do that. And of course, we'd need a very specific script in order to make those generalizations. So what do we conclude from what happened yesterday? Well, first off, the shooter was a woman. She was female. So clearly, America has a problem with toxic femininity. And we need to address that crisis right away, starting with more university panel shaming an entire gender. Somebody alert the HR department to this. And then there's the gun. We'd focus relentlessly on the gun because nothing is more pivotal in a shooting than the weapon that was used. It's always the gun's fault, always.
And you know what? To be fair to Tucker Carlson, he would never make generalizations. I mean, just take a look at the rundown of the types of comments that he's made in the past.
I mean, let's be honest. If you were to do an actual measure of racism, Mexico is a far more racist country than the United States. I mean, the last 4 presidents have all been white people who went to Harvard or Yale.
But we don't need to just sit back and stand by while people take advantage of our lack of a secure border.
Right, so 60,000 Americans died last year from drug ODs, and most of those drugs came from Mexico. So they're a hostile country. They're abetting the movement of these people here. I understand why Mexico wants to export its poor to the United States. I'm sure if we could export our poor to Canada, some people would be in favor of it. Not me, but some. Unfortunately, our leaders are going to tell us that acts of terror is something that happens, like the weather. Just accept it and move on. There is nothing you can do, or better yet, just pretend it's not happening all around you. Tomorrow, thousands of activists will descend on Washington to demand that you be punished for crimes that others committed. It's called the March for Our Lives, and it's designed to lobby for new gun control legislation across the country. I'm coming to the conclusion that feminism isn't sincere. Just throwing that out there.
He would never make generalizations. He's really above that.
Yeah. So it's not that we don't understand the setup. We do. Oh, if I was on MSNBC or CNN, I would say this. But you see, if they were to talk about toxic masculinity and how, and by the way, that's a phrase I don't love. We've discussed that in the post game for the members. By the way, tytnetwork.com/join to become a member and catch those post games. But if they were to apply that to male shooters, well, the overwhelming majority of mass shooters are male. Hence, there would be some logic in it. Now, I would disagree, and I wouldn't want to profile men any more than I'd want to profile Muslims or right-wingers who do the majority of terrorism in this country. And it's not fair to lump those radicals in with all the right-wing in this country, which is about 45% of the country, right? So, but saying, hey, is this an issue that we should discuss? I mean, that's what Fox News does all the time. In fact, as Anna showed you in that clip right there, after one terrorist attack, presumably a Muslim one, Tucker Carlson was like, we got to do something about terrorism. We got to talk about the Muslims and what's going on here. But if you say about men, he'll say, oh no, I can't believe they're bringing up toxic masculinity. So, but saying that doing likewise is when you have one female shooter to pretend that's the same thing and the equivalent would be talking about toxic femininity is disingenuous at best.
Right, exactly. And I want to reiterate, even though the majority of these mass shootings that happen in the country are done by young white males, as far as I know, no one on this network has ever advocated for anything that would take away white males' rights or discriminate against them or make them feel disenfranchised. That's the whole reason why we bring that up is because there is a double standard. And the double standard is you have some members of the media, specifically those on Fox News, who love to make generalizations about an entire population of people based on, incidents that happen in the US or abroad. And so it's just hilarious how he misrepresents everyone else while he sits there and does exactly what he accuses other people of doing.
No one on this network would be stupid enough to say that even though a majority of the terrorism in America is done by right-wingers, that part is true, that we got to ban all right-wingers from the country until we figure out what the hell is going on. Until we figure out what the hell is going on, just ban them all because we don't have a mind.
Yeah. We got to take a break. When we come back, CNN commentator goes after Bernie Sanders rather aggressively. I'll tell you why.
Drums. Thanks for watching or listening to this free version of the Young Turks podcast. You know that the full show is at tytnetwork.com/join. If you become a member, you get the full show ad-free. We love you for watching or listening. Either way, there's going to be a new free podcast tomorrow. You can keep on doing that. But if you want to get the full show ad-free, tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.